he fell into a trance. Now that's one hungry man. No, he didn't fall into a trance because he was hungry. This was a man that, while I'm waiting, call me. I'm going to go up on the housetop and pray a while. And while he was up there, he fell into a trance. He had a vision. We read in Acts chapter 2, when Peter began to preach on the day of Pentecost, he said, "This is that was prophesied by the prophet Joel. Your young men shall see visions." And here we find in the last days that Peter was on the housetop, and just as Joel had prophesied, Peter was fixing to see a vision. Verse 11, "And I saw heaven open, and a certain vessel descending unto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at four corners, and let down to earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, and wild beasts." And it seems like folks want to stop right there and begin to talk about them beasts and how that they represent the Gentiles. But I want you to know tonight that this represents more than just the Gentiles. "Wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts, all of the earth, and wild beasts, and creeping things." Everybody say, "and creeping things." And creeping things. I don't know how many times that's been skipped over, or it's been read but not spoken about. "And creeping things, and fowls of the air." Now, if we're going to insist that we have a serpent in the Garden of Eden, then we have to include serpents being brought into the church along with the Gentiles. But if we want to go back and understand it as the man that wrote at the cross, "For such a worm as I." These scriptures are not just talking about Gentiles coming into the church. This is talking about every unclean thing. As they gathered around on the day of Pentecost, and Peter began to preach, and he told them, "This Jesus whom you crucified, this Jesus whom you let the sinful nature of man, it caused you to take and rise up and crucify this Jesus. This filthy nature that you've got. And I want you to know, whether it's Jew or Gentile, it doesn't matter, male or female, it doesn't matter what nationality you are." And when we're talking Jew, we might as well be saying Jew, Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, whatever you may put the title over your door, whether it's Pentecost, Apostolic. I want you to know that if you're not living for God, there's still a sinful nature there. And when Peter seen the sheet let down with all the unclean animals and the creeping things, the serpent that had been cursed in the garden, the sinful nature of man, I want you to know that Peter was showed that this was going to be for everyone. Just as God had said, it's not the will of God that any should perish, but that all should come. as this sheet was let down, verse 13 says, there came a voice unto him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What God has cleansed, that call thou not common. This was done thrice, and the vessel was received up again to heaven. I want you to know that I think whenever they happened the third time, and then that sheet was lifted back to heaven, that old Peter, there he was, full of the Holy Ghost. At a place where oftentimes men elevate people to the place where now then you don't make mistakes. Now you don't make mistakes. And when that sheet went up into heaven after being let down the third time and he told God no, I can't help but believe that his thoughts raced back to when he told Jesus, Oh no, I'll not deny you, Lord. I'll not deny you. Are you one of the disciples? And the Bible tells us he even cursed to make sure that they understood that there's no way this man could have been one of the disciples that followed Jesus. Listen to the filthy mouth. Listen to the dirt come out of that mouth. What had happened? Peter had went back to the place where he was eating of the dirt. The sinful nature of man. He was eating of that sinful nature. Listen to that dirty mouth. Peter, no way he could be a part of that group. They weren't like that. And I think when that sheet went up back into heaven for the third time, all of a sudden he realized that he was still making the same mistake that he made back then. Only this time, instead of staying back and idly doing nothing while they crucified Jesus, this time he said, Yes, Lord, I'll go. Yes, Lord, I'll go. I'm telling you tonight that it's not, the problem is not that we stumble and we fall and we make our mistakes. The problem comes in when we don't pick ourselves up and we wallow in the mess. We wallow in the filth. We wallow in the dirt and we stay there. God doesn't intend for us to stay slithering and eating of the dust. We don't have to stay a worm. We can get back up out of the mire again and He'll still use us. I think sometimes one of the greatest things that a pastor can have is experience. I'm not proud of my past at all. But let me tell you what. It causes me to have compassion. It causes compassion within me. There is nothing that will cause compassion in a person any more than having gone through something that somebody else has went through. You take a person that's skinny as a rail and never had problem gaining weight, telling somebody how to lose weight, I guarantee you there ain't no compassion there. But you talk to somebody that struggled and struggled and struggled to keep their weight under control and trying to bring it down, then you got somebody that's got compassion.